Chasa Pimagisa Dambala Yatsi Ching Juni Bimajani Shisudra Gadi Kandra Mambaku Gyeki Jesu Datrayi Jingila Chi Jesus Gurupema Siddhi Om. May all beings everywhere be awakened, liberated, healed, and free. May there be peace in this world and throughout all possible universes. And may we all together complete the spiritual journey. Homage to the Buddha, the light within. Don't overlook it.
Welcome.
Thank you. It's
Thank
nice
you
to
so
be here.
much. Good. Hello, and this is Mitchell J. Rabin for A Better World. Thanks so much for joining us. You were just introduced to Surya Das, a beautiful man who has written this book, among others, Awakening to the Sacred by Broadway Books. You can get that, generally everywhere at this point. And Surya Das has been kind enough to come onto the show and talk with us about his many years, actually 30 years experience in Tibetan Buddhism, in monasteries across the East. And now he is teaching across America with a following of people who are listening and learning practices of mindfulness and learning to get in touch with themselves through the practices of Buddhism. It's great to have you.
Thank you. It's wonderful to be here. I feel like we know each other already. Maybe it's from past lives. Who knows? Or maybe it's because we both grew up Jewish on our parents' side in the suburbs.
With Buddhist tendencies.
Right.
Right. I think probably both, because you look a little familiar to me.
Maybe we played your summer camp in softball.
Was that you? No.
It was, or one of my friends.
Indeed. It's an archetype,
Yeah,
it's an
exactly.
archetype. This is a wonderful book. What I've been
Thank
reading
you.
in it is brings forth this wonderful notion that I think pulls at the heartstrings of all people, Surya, which is the idea that we all, when you quote the Dalai Lama, all really want to make people happy and to be happy ourselves.
Mm-hmm. That's right. I think that's the basic human impulse, Mitchell. And we all have that. And even animals have it. Of course, it's a little less conscious. But, Buddhism, as many deep spiritual traditions, believes that the spirit, whatever you call it, inhabits all beings, not just human beings. And even animals have right to life and so on. So, animals also don't want their young killed or themselves harmed. And if you put a match near an ant or a spider, it runs away. So this points out the common ground of all sentient or creatures.
Mm-hmm.
And just to talk in English, we're all God's creatures, we're all God's children, speaking in
Yes,
English.
absolutely.
And I think it's important to remember that. Now, of course, in the spiritual world, we have many different words for these things, whether it's Buddha nature or Jesus' words, but still it all comes down to the common ground that we all share. And the Dalai Lama himself has been teaching a lot about the art of happiness and so on, his best-selling books. And
so named.
Yes, and although it might seem that when he says the purpose of life is happiness, it might seem a little superficial. I think, having heard that for 35 years now, I'm starting to see more the depths of it, because it relates to us, speaks to us where we are. We are all seeking happiness and pleasure rather than pain and so on, but it goes deeper than that. Pleasure may seem superficial, happiness is a little deeper.
Mm-hmm.
Then there's fulfillment, then there's contentment, then there's everlasting peace, heaven, nirvana, and so on. It goes all deep. So
Indeed.
I think that is really the purpose of our life. Now we might say we have a higher purpose, but I think if you tell me your higher purpose, I can help anybody understand that what they're really doing is they're saying, well, I'm trying to make a better world. You might say, why? They'll say, it really comes down to because us and those we love and others will be happier or safer or more
Right.
peaceful. So I really do think happiness and inner peace and fulfillment is the purpose of life. And this is something anybody can experience, not just the Dalai Lama or Jesus or Buddha, or for that matter, Lama Surya Das. I'm just a guy like you. Like I always say, my message is, Mitchell, if I can do it, you can do it, our listeners, viewers can do it, anybody can do it. I'm just a 3-letter jock from Long Island, nothing special. But I've walked the path for a few decades. I've walked the path for a few decades. Well, I'm a slow learner.
That's my line. Anyway, actually,
maybe we went to the same college.
I have a feeling I'm getting suspicious here. How is it that a nice Jewish boy from Long Island, Surya, came across Buddhism and took to it as deeply
God knows.
as you did?
As my mother would say, oy vey is mia. Who knows? It must have been my karma.
It must have been.
Karma's a good
You were
out. I take the 5th. No.
My karma.
I met these things in the 60s. I was
Yes.
in college in the University of Buffalo. I marched in Washington as part of the peace movement. You can read about this. People can read about this in the autobiographical introduction to my first big best-selling book, Awakening the Buddha Within. One of my friends was killed at Kent State. One of the students killed there, Alison Krauss, in 1970. We just celebrated the 30th anniversary of that tragedy. And that turned my head around, and I realized I wanted to become peace, not just fight for peace. Fighting for peace started to seem like a contradiction in terms. So when I graduated from college, I went to the East to further pursue these things that I had met in college and in the 60s in California and in New York. Meditation, yoga, chanting, vegetarianism, nonviolent thought like from Gandhi, and so on. And I'd been reading those things and learning to meditate in the late 60s, but it wasn't until 1971 when I graduated and went to India that I started to really live it. And so I went to India just sort of looking for these things, not really planning to stay there more than 6 months or a year or two. And I sort of never came back. I'm not even here now, are you?
Just part of me.
Yeah, right. So I just,
That's
it was my
incredible.
karma.
Was it India that you stayed in all these
Well,
years?
the
or
Indian
Nepal?
subcontinent, India and Nepal. I visited Tibet a few times. Of course, Tibet is owned by China, so you can't really stay there very long.
Sure.
Most of the great teachers, like His Holiness the Dalai Lama and my own gurus, fled from Tibet in 1959 when the communist Chinese took over. So they live in the rim areas of the Himalayas, Nepal, Bhutan, Sikkim, Darjeeling. I lived for many years in Darjeeling.
I see.
In a monastery there, and so on. That's where I spent my time. Also 1 year in Japan studying Zen and working to make money to stay in
Sasaki
India.
Roshi.
Yes?
That's right. I did.
I studied with
him as
Sasaki
well.
Roshi. That's right.
Yes, indeed. Zen Institute of America.
Yeah.
Right.
Sasaki
We're not
Roshi is
friends.
still alive, you know. He's 85 years the oldest.
California or New Mexico?
California, oldest Zen master. And
Is
on
he-
that subject, and for our viewers in our kind of conversation today, we sometimes think these things are very abstruse or far away. Sasaki Roshi is a great Japanese old Zen master. He's not a westernized, New Yorker with a Brooklyn accent by any means. But
True.
this is the way he teaches. He taught me, and this goes back to the 70s also, so this is not just something new for the 21st century. In the 70s, he gave me the koan, or the Zen riddle for meditation. How do you realize God while driving car? So first of all, he used the word God, just to point out that whether you say realize Buddha, or realize enlightenment, or realize God, we're still talking about the inner realization, not about what it's called. And second, he's saying while driving car. He's not saying while meditating in a cave. While driving car, or while going to work, or while
Or riding
washing the
rickshaw.
dishes,
Yeah.
or
Just
sitting, whatever you're doing. So
very real world.
the real question is the conundrum of Dharma and spirituality in daily life is how to realize God, find truth, or awaken the, quote, Buddha, or the divinity within, while you fill in the blank. Riding the commuter train, washing the diapers, taking out the garbage, or for that matter, making love or arguing with your mate. That's all part of life. And we have to make it all grist for the spiritual mill. Otherwise we get very compartmentalized and we lose touch with the wholeness that is integral to our being. Then
Now-
every part of spiritual life, every part of life is living spirit. We are spiritual beings. We're not just human beings trying to become spiritual. We're spiritual beings trying to learn how to live on earth.
Indeed.
We are spirit embodied.
Now, would you say then, if we are in fact in touch with the divine within, would we actually be arguing with our mate?
We might argue with our mate, like what movie to see, or whether to say no to the kids or yes. That's part of life. But there's a difference between arguing and fighting, and violence and aggression and all that. We might argue in a
Indeed.
different way. Like a therapist that told me once, people have to learn how to fight to have a good relationship.
Indeed.
Otherwise, you can't. That doesn't mean fisticuffs. It means argue.
No.
It means stand up for what you want. So, although nonviolence is a very important value, in practice of life, we have to do our best and struggle consciously for what we believe in. That's what I mean by fight.
Indeed.
So we might fight with our wife or husband or business adversary, or we might, it depends on our profession, we might fight against a corporation like Microsoft that's pursuing unfair business process.
Sure.
Or we might fight, for that matter, against injustice or violence.
By all means.
And I feel very passionate about that. That's why when we talk about nirvana or inner peace, it doesn't mean you become passive like a couch potato or a meditation potato. Not at all. It means you unlock many of the inhibitions, and the spontaneous creativity can come out of you.
And
Become-
voice. And voice.
And voice, and art, creativity,
what I
innovation,
mean is, as in
to
speak your mind.
right, you can
And
speak your
This
truth,
is
and
the most important thing.
yeah, you can speak your truth, and you can stand up for what you believe in, and you don't have to mince words. You can say what you mean and mean what you say, and not have all other kinds of, speaking with forked tongue and all kinds of other things that, let's face it, we all sometimes fall into. I'm not naive. We all fall into that sometimes, or the little white lies. But in the long run, truth is very important. And not just truth up here like a divine ideal, but truth lived as honesty, as good character, as
Yes.
virtue,
Being honorable.
ethical business person, ethical engaged parent or citizen, not a dropout. All is the part of seeking truth, by living truth, by manifesting in life. That's what I've written about in Awakening
Yes.
to the Sacred, Building a Spiritual Life from Scratch, and my other books. How we can actually,
Let me show this beautiful book again.
thank you, how we can actually, there are chapters in here on everything from God and Buddha, form and emptiness, to explicit practices like bowing, meditation, prayer, yoga,
Yogas.
chanting, self-inquiry, journal writing, poetry, but also gardening, conscious parenting, the yoga of relationship, as I call it, a relation shop. I think we all have a lot of work to do there, and that's
Yeah.
part of the spiritual path. Right livelihood, finding our true vocation, making a life, not just a living.
Mhm.
All of this is part of the spiritual path, and I have chapters on that in this book. And
Beautiful.
if I can do it, you can do it. Anybody can do it. It doesn't mean we have to run away to the Himalayas or change our hairstyle, shave our heads, or change our clothes for monastery
Sure.
or ashram clothes. Not at
In
all.
fact,
It
you
requires
are
an inner
actually-
transformation.
You are an example of someone who has come, first, of course, from here to
Mm.
there, became obviously very well and comfortably ensconced in that
Mhm.
style of life, which is radically different than what we have here. And you have chosen to bring your message and the Buddhist message here back to America and have it applied to the real world, as you're suggesting and the book goes into.
That's right. Well,
This is so vitally important for so many people to hear who think that the spiritual life takes place somehow removed from this
Right.
life.
right. Well, even here in New York,
Don't you deal with that a lot?
all
I
the time.
imagine you do.
But people always ask me why I don't wear robes and shave my head or wear beads and other things. I'm going to put my beads away because I don't really keep them out and show them. And you see how I dress. And I do have robes, and I have been a monk and shaved my head for many years. But that was in training phase. And it separates us from the public here in America. And we have a more Protestant rather than Catholic
Yes.
America and democracy. So
Yes.
I think it's very important for us all to really connect and make contact and be one with others, not be separate from them, above them.
Indeed.
So I feel like it's very important that we find spirituality in blue jeans, in sneakers, in jogging pants, or for that matter in makeup and jewelry, whatever your thing is.
Sure.
Because it's not our possessions that are the problem, it's our attachment to them.
Indeed.
Whether we or
True.
they own us. So, but it does require some transformation of the heart and mind.
Let me ask you.
I'd rather transform my heart and mind than just transform my clothes and hairstyle.
By all means, it's got to be a bit
And that's
deeper
important.
than skin deep.
But I do want to say that as I've gone through all that traditional training in the East, it also, could be helpful for some people to make that kind of journey, either to the East or to go to a meditation course or yoga retreat or pilgrimage, or for that matter, a vision quest, or week fast or something like that here in this country. There are great places to do it right here in New York, in upstate, or in New England. Everywhere in this country, as we all know, has many places that even the YMCAs, you can practice yoga and so on. So yoga without Hinduism. You can learn mindfulness and meditation without the Buddhism on top of it.
That's right.
So anybody can practice these things and get the benefit of yoga, meditation, and so on, Tai Chi, without the religious overlay if they choose. In other words, without converting.
I understand.
Anybody can be a better Jew or Christian by becoming more healthy through those practices without converting from Judaism or Christianity.
Exactly. In fact, one of the nice features of your book, Surya, is that you spend a fair amount of time going through and making reference to many different religions and different bodies of literature as well, Virginia Woolf and poets, Walt Whitman and others, and it's just very heartening to see that you are really looking at the underlying connections and the themes that bring them all together rather than separate them.
Well, Mitchell, like yourself, that this is all part of our lineage, that, you have a Jewish background, but you're also practicing yoga, and you're a poet, and you're a therapist. So, and all of this comes together in our own being, and we need to honor that. And America is a melting pot. We have melting pot karma, therefore we have melting pot dharma, or spirituality, not insular, sectarian, dogmatic dharma. It's very difficult to say seriously today, I have the best way, I have the only way. We have a shrinking world, a global culture. We see there are many cultures, there are many ways. The important thing is we have to find the only way, the right way for oneself.
Yes, indeed.
In that way, the only way and the true way is appropriate to say. But it doesn't mean it's the only way any more than there's only one cuisine for everybody in the world, as if French food which is the best in the world. There's many cuisines for different kind of people. Different horses need different courses. And spiritually speaking, it's very much the same.
Right.
But they all share a common ground, I believe, and they're all heading in the same direction, no doubt.
It's this larger archetypal field of seeking happiness.
Right.
And all the symbols that come up along that path.
That's right.
Which might look like Buddha, or might look like Krishna. It may look like any number of different faces. The face of Jesus.
Right. The many faces, 1,000 faces of God,
as
Joseph Campbell so insightfully put it.
Exactly.
But I do think it's important that we don't become dilettantes. In the beginning, it's good to window shop, but after a while, we have to go in and try things on, find something that fits, buy it, take it home.
And live with
it. Live with it or return it, but not just be a window shopper a whole life. So we do want to dig deep and dig the well down and get till we get water, not keep starting different wells all the time. So I think it's very important also. That's why I teach one thing mainly, which is Buddhist meditation, yoga, chanting, and self-inquiry, because that's how I do it, and that's what I love.
I understand, and I appreciate that. I want to raise something because you deal with it so deftly, and I think it's a very important point. I know Trungpa Rinpoche spent a fair amount of time holding conferences about the non-theistic nature of Buddhism, and he had nuns and priests on one side and Buddhist practitioners on the other, and they talked about how Buddhism is non-theistic. Yet, in what you've been saying here in this interview, Surya, as well as in the book, you give very short shrift to the whole idea, in a way. I mean, you refer to Buddha nature as essentially being synonymous with the divine within, or with godliness.
I think so.
Is that? I would love to hear what you have to say about
Well,
that.
Trungpa Rinpoche was an early pioneer, and he was educated in Oxford. He was a Tibetan refugee Lama. He was very, very brilliant. But
not only him, many scholars have spent a fair amount of time picking over that question.
Right. So
of the monotheistic God from the West, so to speak, versus what they sometimes refer to, as you do, the atheistic teaching of Buddhism.
Yeah, well,
which I don't think is accurate.
Buddhism is not atheistic, it's more agnostic. Buddha, when asked about God, he did not answer. He said, I teach one thing only, the path to enlightenment, the path to the end of suffering and the finding of nirvanic peace and happiness. So Buddhism isn't so much a religion as an ethical, psychological philosophy of awakening. of course, it's one of the 7 world religions. It's evolved over
Yes.
2,500 years as a world religion,
Sure.
but it has no creator. It does not deny a creator. It doesn't deal in that. It deals in the law of karma, cause and effect, that what goes around, comes around,
Yes.
that we don't just begin or end in this life, that things of the past affect us now, and we don't just end with our
It's
last
very real
breath.
world.
You know, it's kind of a deeper ecology of being, including rebirth and all beings, not
Except
just human
the Pure
beings.
Land, right? I mean, that's a whole other.
There are many schools of
aspect
Buddhism.
of-
and
yeah.
The Pure Land School is one of them, of course.
What is your school, by the way?
The Tibetan Buddhist school, the Dzogchen lineage.
Okay.
Dzogchen, the great perfection teachings of Tibetan
Mhm.
Buddhism.
Uh-huh.
The non-dual teachings of Tibetan Buddhism,
I see.
which the Dalai Lama and many other teachers study and teach, like Trungpa Rinpoche
Yes.
and the Dalai Lama, etc.
And that will be part of what might even be another school, like the Kagyu. or
Yes, well,
what have you.
Dzogchen is a mystical. It's like mysticism. So all
Yes.
of the different
It's
teachers
the mystical.
have it in their,
lineage.
you know, besides their liturgies and their philosophy, the Dzogchen non-dual meditation is part of their practice lineage.
Since you brought that up, I want to just ask you, Surya, what was it like for you as a guy from New York to spend so many years in concentrated meditation in a Tibetan Buddhist monastery?
It was just like this. Just the flower was just like opening and just sitting there, not doing anything, but just opening a little bit every day.
Yeah. That's such a beautiful answer.
I don't know
And
what it
did
was
you
like.
feel
I
that
was
you
in
were
it.
Missing something?
No,
or you were-
everything was there.
Yeah.
Everything was there. Of course, there was no heat, no insulation, no electricity, no running water, not to mention no TV, radio,
Sure.
magazines, newspapers,
Right.
novels, movies, women. But what was there was the greatest living Tibetan masters. And also I traveled around India over those 20 years and met all the sages and saints.
Yes.
And that's what was there, and that's what I was interested in. So when I was younger, in my 20s and 30s, all I was interested in was studying and practicing these things. So that's what I did. And there was nothing missing. I did a little work. I went to Japan for a year to study Zen and teach college so I could stay in India for a few more years. I saved money in India. You know, I came back to
Yes.
visit home once. My parents visited me in Japan once.
I see.
But for 70s, I sat out the 70s and 80s. I voted with my meditation
Literally.
cushion.
Sat out,
Yeah.
yes.
But, you
It's
know,
beautiful. I mean,
in-
I
in
really
my-
honor your commitment.
around
and
40 or
discipline.
45, I sort of found myself or my vocation. People started to invite me to come and teach at their meditation centers and school, you know, universities and yoga centers and New Age centers in Europe and America. So in the 90s, early 90s, I started doing that. When I became around 40, early 40s, and started to find myself in my vocation as a teacher and as a poet and writer and speaker, kind of spokesperson for the emerging Western Buddhism or Western
Yes.
Dharma. Not just Buddhism, but Dharma.
Yes, indeed.
And now that I'm approaching 50, I think I just don't have to argue anymore. That's from now, and maybe
That's an attainment.
yeah, I think so. And maybe in a few more years, whatever I do won't have any effect on my inner state. That's my goal. In a few more years.
Beautiful, right? No matter how many insults from ordinary life you would have to sustain, just water off
Be
the duck's
happy.
back.
Right, everything's fine.
Yeah.
Because when everything's fine within, then even though there are terrible things and injustices in the world, it's not to put them aside, but everything is fine within. Then
Yeah.
you come from wholeness into helping, into service, not out of compulsion or missionary zeal, like shoving the truth down the heathen's throat, but
Yes,
more from
indeed.
wholeness and not
And heart.
not and heart and real generosity, not like codependence.
Sure.
I'll help you if you help me. If you convert to my religion, I'll give you food and medicine. Many missionaries have done that in the past, and we Buddhists don't missionarize. As the Dalai Lama himself always say, it's better to contribute to others than convert others. So we think that it's better to become a better whatever you are.
Yes.
Why become a Buddhist when you can become like a Buddha, a better whatever you are?
Exactly. Enough with ists and isms.
Yeah, isms
You
and
know?
schisms, and then you end up with
Yeah.
crusades, holy wars, and genocide. And
Really
religion
true.
has brought a great deal of that kind of
Much pain and
negativity
suffering.
into the world, as well as its beautiful spirituality and values that also travels with the religions.
Exactly true.
And I think today we need to think less about isms and religions and more about spirituality, values,
Yes.
emotional intelligence, character development,
Integrity.
integrity, honesty, as I said before, virtue, Now, we live in a time of cultural relativism where everybody's afraid to say this is the truth. And I also don't like to be dogmatic about that, but I think we all know nobody likes to be harmed, nobody likes their loved ones to be harmed. So there are some universal values,
Yes,
such as
there are.
nonviolence, honesty, unselfishness, patience,
Kindness.
respect, and honoring
Humor.
others, humor, and
I
so
think that
on.
should be one of the 10 great virtues.
Humor? Yeah, I think it should be, otherwise life's not much fun.
Can we do something about that, like on some kind of formal level?
I think, no, definitely, I think we need to do more laughing meditation. Just, ah! Or just act silly.
Free it up.
Act silly, yeah. Find your own way to do it. I actually teach people to do this, even when they're meditating, if they're falling asleep. People always ask me this question, what to do when you're falling asleep? You can breathe deeply, you can stand up, you can pat your face, you can meditate with your eyes open, but you can also just do, which kind of cracks you up.
I've had some
So
of
let's
my
not be too
greatest
square about
belly
this.
laughs at Carmicholing in northern Vermont after 12 hours of sitting, and something silly happens, like somebody just looks a funny way, and everybody's hysterical.
And as we noticed that with spiritual realization, it makes us lighter. So
Yes, it does.
let's lighten up as well as enlighten up while walking the path. Spirit is joy. Spirit is freedom. Spirit is bliss and delight.
Really
It's not a
true.
grim dogma. It's not a chore. It's not penance.
Somber.
Spirit is joy. Spirit is awakening.
Really true. On that note, since the goal, the avowed goal, if you will, of Buddhism is enlightenment, nirvana, and you've been sitting for so many years, as you say, sat out the 70s, how do you see yourself relative to that great state that we all sort of look for, of
Well, just
concretized happiness, if you will?
Well, happiness and these things are not really a state. It's available anytime if we can just release or let go a little bit into it. It's like relaxation. It's not a state. We learn to relax, and even in the midst of traffic, you can relax. Holding on to wheel tight doesn't help you get there any faster, not to mention ending up with road rage.
How true it is.
So any moment you can breathe, smile, and relax and have a smile. And that's your 1 moment or 1 minute instant nirvana right there. And people always ask me how I live in the world in my busy travels and leading
Yes.
conferences and all over the world and things. I just do it. It's no different than sitting once you get to that place where you always live a mindful life. So you have conscious or mindful speech, conscious and mindful actions, conscious and mindful relations. You're always paying attention. Meditation is attention. Meditation is not just crossing your legs.
Sure.
You can meditate standing up or walking or chanting or lying down. Meditation
Or
is
driving
about
a car.
intention and attention. So I concentrate on that. Of course, I meditate an hour or two every morning, and I do meditation retreats all year round.
Sure.
But still, integration with daily life is the essence of spirituality today. And
Beautiful.
love. Let's not forget about love and the heart.
Not at all. Surya, I'm sorry to say that we're out of time, even though it is everlasting. We'll have to have you back again. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Would you kindly end with a chant for our audience?
Ngiwadi nyadudu Jinri ziwan rajane Drawa chicha malubu Deyi zalagapasho. May the day be blessed. May the night be blessed. May the wheel of luminosity effortlessly turn day and night, illuminating the way for all.
Thank you. This is Mitchell J. Rabin for A Better World. God, I hope you enjoyed that like I did. Well, I look forward to seeing you all next week, and thanks so much for joining me.